Hi everyone, I'm Gary, and today we are going to talk about the second part of my Curse of Strahd playthrough. So I've already done the first part of this. I'll put a link in the top right. You can see the first part up there, but this video is a little bit different in the sense that I don't have any notes and it's not scripted. I'm just talking through a kind of campaign log or diary of my current campaign, which is a Curse of Strahd campaign. Now, I've run Curse of Strahd before. I've run it 4 times before. And then this is the 5th time that I'm running Curse of Strahd. And at the end of the last session, the 4 characters were on the Old Svarlich Road, having passed kind of Castle Ravenloft, been attacked by werewolves, and were on their way to Valaki. The 4 party members. I'll put a little info card as well on this on this screen so you can see it. Hopefully, it's there now. That just explains who each of the characters are quickly. So there's Bujma, who is a human kind of janissary. She's a kind of ranger. There is Devran, who is a human wizard. There is Kevin, who is a human druid, and there is Philip, who is a human, a half orc fighter. And Kevin and Bushman are both god touched. They're kind of we're playing Gem, my game, Journeyman Expert Master, and God touched are kind of like Asimar in 5e. They're kind of like they have some kind of divine heritage in their kind of like ancestry. So last session they met with Ismark and Irina. These are the 2 children of the Burgomaster of the village of Barovia, and they learn that the Devil Strahd, the vampire lord that oversees this whole domain, is interested in Irina. He believes her to be the reincarnation of his one true love, Tatiana. And they agreed to help Ismark and Irina move Irina away from the shadow of the castle, further west, hopefully to the Abbey of St. Markovia in Kresk. So they had been attacked by werewolves, and that's where we started. So I made Philip. I'm going to use people's character names for the sake of anonymity because I think that's fair. As I talk about players and their kind of characters. So Philip had to make a save versus endurance to avoid becoming a lycanthrope, and he narrowly avoided that kind of fate. They continue down the road and they come across Old Bone Grinder. Now, Old Bone Grinder is this enormous windmill that is inhabited by these groups of hags that grind up children's bones and make them into these kind of pastries. Last session, they'd actually met one of the hags peddling their wares in the village of Barovia, and Kevin had actually bought one of these dream pastries and eaten it, and he'd lost he'd eaten it, and as the kind of curse for eating this dream pastry, he'd lost his ability to interpret music. That was kind of like the curse. So they arrived at Old Bone Granite. They were, I gave them the suggestion that you could just walk past it, but they're like, no, we've got to go. It's an old creepy windmill. We're going to go and have a look. They went up. They had a good look around outside, and before going in, they were like listening. They could hear kind of like the cackling of the hags inside in the conversation. They had a sense. They kind of knew what they were going to be going up against. They were saying we're going to be fighting hags, we're going to be fighting witches, like something like that. And then they searched around the outside, and they found that there was kind of like a shallow grave with like infants and children's remains in it, so like pretty grim. Like, okay, right, we're definitely getting rid of this. So they had decided that Kevin and Bujma were going to go into the windmill while Philip and Devran are prepared to kind of destroy the lighthouse, the windmill from the outside. So they have a alchemy jug, which they were using to pour oil all around the kind of like the outside. It's taken quite a while because they were going to have to pour loads and loads of it, right? The ground soaking it up and they're pouring it up against the wall and everything. And because our last campaign was Night Below, with these characters, they still had various equipment for kind of moving through tunnels, and they had a mining charge. They had one left. Philip had a mining charge. He said, I'm going to throw a mining charge up onto the side of this thing, so then if we need to, we can like blow a hole in the side of this windmill as Devran sets this on fire. So the 2 characters went inside, Kevin and Bujma, and they look around. They find this kind of like creepy kitchen downstairs. They notice the peddler's cart, so they're like, okay, it's these guys again. We've met these. They go upstairs and they find Morgantha, the eldest of the hags. She's kind of like in the mill room, and they can hear the other hags like cackling upstairs. And she kind of moves into shopkeeper mode and offers to sell them like confectionery and pastries. And actually, what happens is the party engaged her in conversation about what was going on, but also just kind of like generally to try and stay on her good side. And what happened was they have this like porcelain pig that lets them summon kind of like food, and they use that and said, okay, let's sit down and have a meal. And they're all sat down there kind of like eating and having this conversation. And at which point Morgantha is just kind of open about the fact that she's asked what do you actually do here? And she says, oh, the fools in this valley, they make pacts and contracts with me that they can't keep, and then I take their children from them and grind their bones. And they were like, oh, wow, that's pretty direct. I'm like, yeah, she's pretty direct. And then there was, I had them roll an Arcana test, one of them, make Kevin roll an Arcana test because she was subtly casting a spell. She was casting Wizard Seal, like the Wizard Lock on the door downstairs so they couldn't get out. And then at which point she kind of creepily stands up and begins to approach the party. Like, oh, you look like pretty fleshy. At which point she summons her daughters who live upstairs, her hag daughters, and they come down. They come from downstairs, and it starts an attack. The Bushman and Kevin run to the window, and they're like banging on this like tiny little window on the side of the windmill, like get us out, get us out, get us out. At which point, Devon lights all this oil that he's kind of like set out. He starts burning half of it, and then Philip explodes his mining charge, boom, when it blows a hole in the side. And they jump out of the window. It's pretty kind of like bad. They're kind of like really not in a good way at all. Oh no, they don't jump out the window. What they did was to get out. They had a potion of gaseous form, and they kind of both swigged this potion, turned them into a cloud of fog. Once this hole had been blown in the side of the windmill, they rushed out, and then they quickly turned back into their normal forms. In case they were worried that like one of the hags might do something like cast some kind of like wind controlling spell to bring them back, or kind of just shatter their misty kind of form. So the whole windmill is like catching fire. It's going up in flames. Morgantha's stood in this kind of gap, looking down at the party. She's casting a like word of death at them, trying to kill them. She's throwing fireballs down, and so the other hags. What happens is I use a timer die at D4. I've talked about timer die before. Timers die before in How to Speed Up Combat. I'll put a link to it in the top right now, How to Speed Up Combat. But basically, I roll a D4, and we have a development. And what it was, I said, this whole place is like, it's going to catch fire and go up. Because a round in Gem is 1 minute. So this flame is kind of like having enough time to kind of really destroy this windmill. And what happens is I roll a 1. So in one round, the windmill is going to kind of crush down. So what happens is all 3 of the hags try and cast fly to get themselves out of this windmill, out through the hole that they've created. Now, the way counterspelling works in Journeyman Expert Master is anyone who can cast a spell can attempt to counter spell. But if it's like a reaction. It's not like in 5e, it's a spell that you cast. Here, it's just like something that you can do. It's an ability that spellcasters have. But if you fail, you can like take damage. It just is kind of really sort of, it's really sort of dangerous to counterspell kind of willy-nilly. You can only do it once per round anywhere. You don't even attempt it once per round. So what actually happens is Devon, the wizard, he counterspells one of the hags who's trying to cast fly. And Kevin tries to counterspell another one, fails, doesn't matter. So 2 of the hags get out, including Morgantha, the kind of leader hag. And they're like floating around and they're throwing fireballs down and casting spells. And as the windmill kind of like collapses and her daughter's like crushed in this flaming wreckage, and rolls to see which way the windmill would fall as it kind of comes down like this. It's a tall kind of, it's a tall cylindrical structure, so it's going to collapse one way. It's going to land basically with the party, so all the parties have to scatter. And what's going on is Bushman's got a pistol, so she manages to shoot down the daughter, who or manages to like really severely damage her. She's hovering over this like flaming wreckage, trying to kind of cast spells and keep herself together. And what happens is the party are able to kill Morgantha, shoot her down with spells and firearms and crossbows and that kind of thing. Whereas the daughter, who is like nearly dead and she's just floating above this like flaming wreckage, Kevin, the druid, he turns into a giant eagle and he flies up and he attacks her, and she goes like crashing into the flaming wreckage. It was really, really, really good fun. And they got rewarded kind of expertly for that. I let them roll for random treasure on Morgantha, who was the only body that was like recoverable. They rolled really badly, actually. They got something like 4 gems that were worth 50 gold pieces each, and they got a scroll of, I think it was a scroll of charm person. It was a really, really, really poor roll, but it doesn't matter. And they were like, okay, we did something good there. So They move a little bit of a distance away from the windmill. They rest the night, and then the next day they come across Vallaki, this fortified town, and they knew that they were going to have to head through Vallaki. I've given my players a map of Barovia. I think that's helpful, just like a player map that doesn't have all the kind of like annotations on it and all the kind of like keyed areas. I just think that's really helpful, especially because a lot of these adventures, they have really useful resources, really not just useful, but cool looking resources. Like it's a map by Mike Schley. It's a really cool looking map. So I was like, here, just have this and you can see where we're going. So they arrive at Vallaki, make a big deal of all the, like, there's a wolf's head on the gate. There's like pikes with wolf's heads all down because it's just been the wolf's heads jamboree, this kind of festival in Vallaki. Now, when they go in, they learn pretty quickly that there's a stockyard. There's a couple of things. They do some streetwise. They ask about different locations. They end up in the Blue Water Inn, which is the singular large inn in town. And they learn that the burgomaster of Vallaki is not particularly well liked, and he's kind of slightly foolish. Like he puts on these endless processions and carnivals and parades and festivals because he thinks it keeps Strahd out of the town. A lot of the citizens don't really believe it has any effect whatsoever. Inside the Blue Water Inn, they meet Erwin Martikov, who is the innkeep, but they also meet Rictavio, who is this wandering bard who has been brought here by the mists. And they kind of like take him straight away. They've got a cryptic clue from the Vistani that a man with the monkey is going to help them. And Rictavio has a monkey, so they're like, okay, we need to kind of get this guy on side. They do some gossiping and drinking with some of the other locals, but they also meet the two, I don't know how to pronounce this, Vacter, Wachter, Vacter. But anyway, they meet these two Vacter kind of like scions of this noble house that also live in Vallaki. And they're horrible, like they're like refusing to play their bar tab, they're like starting fights, it's been unpleasant. They really insult Kevin, and Kevin, it's really funny, the player was like, okay, I'm just going to go over, I'm going to like tell them not doing that, I'm going to roll intimidate, roll the natural one, and I was like, oh, they don't take you seriously at all, they're just like laughing in your face. They're like calling a loser and like walk out of the bar going home, we're going to tell mommy about this, and then they leave. The player was really like, it was really good fun, but I could tell he was like hacked off that he just rolled a natural one. He's like, can I go out into the street and like deal with them? I was like, yeah, you can. They don't live too far, right? They're gonna go home. It's like, okay, right. Well, we'll sort this out. They do a bit of gossiping. They continue gossiping. They continue kind of carousing and spending time in the Blue Water Inn. They learn that the Vacter boys are sons of Lady Vacter, and she hates the Burgomaster, and she is allied with Strahd and kind of wants to get rid of him. Get rid of the Burgomaster so she can install herself. And while this is all going on, they're also kind of talking to Rictavio, and they're deciding what they need to do with Irina, because they're going to have to continue going. They could have continued walking instead of staying in Vallaki, but they decide to stay in Vallaki. And then what happens is that Kevin also was like, okay, I'm going to go out and see if I can maybe find a raven to talk to, because they'd noticed that the inn was covered in ravens when they went in, and as a druid he can talk to ravens, and there was actually a raven on the outside of Old Bonegrander as well, so these ravens have been giving them kind of warnings like, make sure you do this, be careful here, don't go in there. I'm going to go see if I can find a raven and ask them to spy on the Vacter household. And what happens is, while he's out there kind of like just wandering the streets in the middle of the night, it was like 11 o'clock at night, like misty, freezing, there's no guards out, the vampire Strahd emerges from the mist, doesn't introduce himself, just gives Kevin a kind of warning. You know, you should leave tomorrow, and you should leave Irina here. And if you don't, you're going to kind of draw my ire. Then he, vanishes into the mist as he does, and Kevin's like, whoa, like, we met the villain already. It was really, really, really good fun. He goes back inside, he tells all his friends that Strahd, like, I've just seen him, he was out there. And they're like, yeah, whatever. So no, you don't understand. Like, he wants Irina. We gotta look after her, but we gotta kind of go tomorrow. So they get up in the morning and they find that the roads are they're being closed off in town for the next festival, which is the Festival of the Blazing Sun. There's a giant wicker sun being set up in the center of the town, and they have to kind of grease some palms from the guards to get to Rictavio's wagon, because they've convinced Rictavio to come with them. Now, here's Rictavio's wagon. They hitch up the horses, which is in the stockyard, and they're getting ready to leave. When they're like, oh, where is there enough seating? And I was like, well, Rictavio won't actually let you in the wagon because, by the way, he keeps his tiger in there. It was funny. One of the players was like, he doesn't have a tiger in his like wagon. Like you just made that up, and I was like, I'm gonna have to read the bit from the book. Like he has a saber-toothed tiger in his wagon, which he was kind of like keeping secret. So they're like, okay, well, Rictavio can sit in the wagon with his tiger, and we'll all sit kind of like clinging on the outside. We set off the next day, and we're riding really, really quickly. They work out that if they ride all day, they can make it to Krezk pretty much like just in a day or so. So they're riding really, really quickly in the wagon, and they eventually make it to Krezk. They have a bit of a discussion about which way to go along the main road. They go off a kind of dirt track or not, but they just go, no, let's get to Krezk. And the guards at Krezk and the Burgomeister on the walls of this fortified village, they say, okay, we'll let half your party in, but our shipments of wine and beer and other kind of consumables from the winery, which is to the south, are being they've stopped. So can you go and investigate this? They'd already been asked by the innkeeper of the Blue Water in Inverlarkey, Erwin. He said that, my family, they're involved in the winery as well. And then something weird has happened. Can you go and see? So they were going to be heading there anyway. So they go, okay, right. We'll send the wagon into Krezk, and we'll send Irina and Ismak into Krezk. But they ask Rictavio to come with them, and I say, yeah, that's fine. And as they're walking to the winery, they decide to go and do this immediately. So as they're walking to the winery, they're kind of asking about Rictavio, but I just make a point of saying that there's something about Rictavio that he is he's holding back. He's older than it's obvious, like getting to know him just a little bit, just a few conversations. He's older than he initially seems, and there's a kind of not really a melancholy, but a kind of a seriousness about Rictavio that is often belied when he's like doing performances. So anyway, they continue south and they get to the winery, and they learn what happens is as they're walking towards the winery, someone on the tree line at the edge of the winery like beckons well, like, come on, come on, and they recognize a familial resemblance between this guy and Matikov in the Erwin Matikov in the Blue Water Inn, and they're cousins. And he says, he introduced himself. He says that we are, we're the owners of this winery, but we've been pushed out because evil druids attacked with these kind of like twig monsters, these like branch kind of like constructs, and we need some help getting it back. So the party like, okay, this is like, we're adventurers, this is right up our street. They also learn in conversation. They have quite an extended time living in this kind of like refugee camp on the edge of the winery. They learn that the Martikovs are were ravens. So when they've been seeing these ravens that have been giving them hints, it's actually members of this family being like, do this, don't be careful here. And they also inform the party that the reason they can grow grapes in such a kind of cold climate is that they have these like magical seeds that they can plant in the ground, and they nourish the ground and keep the air temperate here. But they've been stolen by the druids. One has been taken south to a place called Yester's Hill. One has been given to a witch that lives in the ruined and sunken village of Berez, and another one in Insult of the Were-Ravens has been sold to a group of werewolves that live on the other side of the valley. So I'm like, okay, right, it's getting more complicated, but we can go do that. First of all, let's clear the druids out of the winery. So they go to the winery. And it takes them a long time. They think of how to do it because they know that the druids are going to be able to sense them coming through the plants and the vines all around the winery. So what they do is they use effectively castings of Entangle to create vines that they can then approach with. One of the characters is invisible and he reports back what he can see. And in Gem, Devran can cast teleport. He's just got to have a good sense of what the place he's teleporting to looks like. Now, he can't go invisible, so he can't go and have a look inside this room, which is like the with big fermentation vats inside the winery. So he's relying on Philip, who can go invisible. He's relying on Philip's description of the room to kind of try and teleport everyone in. And I rolled a secret intellect test for Philip to has he conveyed the details of this place that we're teleporting to accurately or not. And they did that in secret, and he was actually successful, but the party weren't sure. And then Devran said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to teleport. All of us will teleport in back, and then once we get in, we can quickly, in a surprise round, we can kill these 3 druids that we can see and try and take back control of the winery. So that's what they do. They teleport, and as they teleport, actually, the Devran's player is like, oh, actually, don't have enough FP to bring Rictavio with us. I'm like, okay, well, D4 rounds, he's going to run across the fields and try and get to us. So they appear in the winery, and there's these 3 druids. They're shocked. They get surprise round, and then they attack. They actually they manage to kill one of the druids pretty much straight away, and the other 2 starts this melee as all these twig blights and vine blights come to help the druids. And it starts quite a fraught combat in the winery proper, where there's these big fermentation vats. They're shooting lightning bolts at each other and fireballs. In fact, no, they're not shooting fireballs, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to not set fire to the winery. Usually, Devon was like, I just cast Firestorm, which is like one of the most powerful spells that he has access to. But it's like, it's just going to cause total chaos. And we're actually trying to help these people. We're not just trying to kill these druids. We're trying to help the were-ravens who have been thrown out of the winery. Rick Tavik's banging on this sliding door at the front of the winery, like, let me in, there's all these blights coming. He runs in, closes the doors, all these blights that are in the fields come to like crushing. And after a kind of moment of kind of extreme intensity in which everyone is genuinely contributing, they are able to destroy the druids, and they claim the leader's staff, a Gullfire staff, which they know is they learn is a branch from this tree that grows on Yes's Hill, which is like a vampiric tree, a Gullfire's tree. And that is where we ended. So next time they're going to probably go to Yes's Hill, or they might go after the sunken village of Berez. They know that one of their items that they need to find is being kept in a village that was swallowed by a river. So like, okay, maybe this is like the same place. But man, it was such good fun. We got through loads. We played probably for like 5 hours. But that is just a really kind of clear record of what happened. I think every time I run Curse of Strahd, it's just brilliant. In the next few weeks, there's going to be some videos on Ravenloft as a setting coming out. I'll probably do a video on Curse of Strahd, like a traditional sort of like review video for Curse of Strahd. But until then, I'm Gary. Thank you for listening, like and subscribe, and I'll speak with you again soon.